Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, Nephilim and hobbits. Like I said before, if there are any reptilians in the room, please see me afterwards. And anyone from the alphabet agencies, which are probably here, you're going to learn some stuff. So, if there are any difficulties with fire alarms, doors are there. There are some windows for those that are really desperate. You bring your drinks in if you want to during the course of the day, so there are no hard rules about not having anything in here. No noisy crisps though, because that could be quite distracting. So without further ado, our first speaker is Richard Vobes. He's become a bit of an internet sensation actually, and he had me on a couple of times. For 10 years he produced short documentaries called The Bald Explorer. In 2022 he fell down into the rabbit holes that we're all in now. And he heard the horrific truths about the lockdowns and the vaccines and the money creation. And all credit to him, he's been doing sterling work with the dark forces that seem to surround us. He switched his communication to sharing the knowledge and voicing his opinions, and he currently runs a popular YouTube channel. So if you don't know of Richard, please look at his work. So during the course of this presentation, he's got free will to do whatever he wishes to do. That's how we like it, because it is the alternative view, and we do like alternative opinions on things. So, without further ado, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Richard Vobes.
Is there a radio mic? Hello, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. I was told I could have a handheld radio mic.
You can, but it might interfere. That's the best one.
Oh, I need to...
Just unwrap it, yeah.
Oh, brilliant. Sorry about this, ladies and gentlemen. Slight technical hitch. How long have I got? There we go. Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Sorry about that. Slight technical moment there of great frivolity. Always happens, especially when I'm about to set up, do one of my YouTube channels. You know, you switch the camera on, forget to put the SD card in, or the battery's going, or there's a power cut, or the internet's not working, something like that. So this is everyday life for me. I'm Richard Vobes. I'd just be really interested to know how many people have never seen anything that I put on the internet. Just, could you put a show of hands, just so that we get a vague idea, because that's great. Thank you so much. Hello. Go in the light for the camera. I've already been told. So I like to move around, which is why I always request a radio mic so I can rove around the stage and actually make connection with the audience, which is very much a difficult thing for a YouTuber behind the camera to make a connection, which is why I think these things are so important, because you actually meet people. And the other thing is, of course, people get to see you. They can see you on their phones, on their laptops, on their tablets, on their television. Somebody yesterday said to me, "Oh, you're the man on the telly." And it does take you a bit back when you're a YouTuber, because you're used to just uploading it on a computer to an internet site run by nefarious outfits. And I don't think of it as being on the telly, because I just think that on the telly means the BBC, ITV, Netflix, Amazon Prime even these days. So I never think of myself as being somebody who's on the telly. Although in my career, I was desperate to be on the telly. That's what I did. And in the 1990s, 1996 and 1997, I was on the telly had my own children's television program, which I'm sure you all remember with great frivolity when I tell you it was called Snug and Cozy. No one remembers.
Cozy, you schlimpin, schlam, schlabber. What is it, Snuggy?
We were two bald-headed aliens in silver spacesuits, PVC spacesuits, who were coming away from the planet Squadge all the way to go on holiday in some interstellar star system, bumped into an asteroid and landed on Earth in an allotment. And having crashed our rocket, This is the synopsis for the TV show. Don't get, this is not truth or anything. This is fantastic. It's very easy to get lost in what's true and what isn't. They crash land on Earth. They see all the potting sheds and they think, this must be the holiday homes that people live in and have fun. So we'll stay here. So they stayed in a potting shed, get picked up by a little 10-year-old girl, two blokes in PVC suits with shaven heads. This is the 1990s, you know. It's what you would expect to see on the telly now on children's television, the way TV's going. And they have adventures, all very innocent. It was effectively Laurel and Hardy in spacesuits. It was a sort of a slapstick thing. And there's a whole background story to all of that, which I don't necessarily need bore you with. But we had a lot of fun. So that was when I was on mainstream telly. And whilst I'm here, I may as well mention that the negotiations for this is something that showed me what mainstream telly is really like. We made the pilot for this programme ourselves, and we put it on to... Do you remember... I know you're all very young, whippersnapper type audience in your maybe late teens, early 20s, judging. The light is very good for you, by the way. Just mention that. Do you remember VHSs? Oh, of course you do. Well, we made this film, this pilot, on 16mm, very expensive, edited it all ourselves, did it all together, in an allotment and around with comedy sound effects and various stunts that you wouldn't be allowed to do these days, and sent it off to 8 different TV stations on VHS. And it cost about £8,000 to put this pilot together, because we were hiring proper lights from Samuelson's. Anybody in the film industry will know that Samuelson's is one of these big cinematic light people. And we spent a fortune on this, £8,000 back in 2000. That's more than what they spend on TV programmes today. And we made a little pilot out of it. Sent it off, and of course you send off your thing and say, "Dear sir, I'd like to be on the television, and here is my little idea for a pilot." And very quickly those VHSs came back saying, "Yeah, thanks very much, chaps. It's all very interesting, but not really sure that you're our kind of idiot on the telly." But just when we were giving up hope, we did get 2 television stations, Granada and Scottish Television. And so we went to see Granada in Bury, up near Manchester. Bury. It was Bury nice up there, aye. And they interrogated us about the programme. Then we went to see Scottish Television, and you thought you were here for a truthing movement, didn't you? And all this sort of real stuff. But this is a real story, though. I must get this out of the way. And what happened was, Scottish Television had offices in London, so we went to see them in London rather than going all the way up to Scotland. And they loved it. They loved it. They said, "Oh, yes, this is really good. We can sell this around the world. You're talking in gobbledygook, these 2 aliens. It would be great. I tell you what we'll do, if we can..." Because we'd said, we'd already been to Granada, and they're very interested, play one against the other. And so they were saying, "Oh, yeah, no. If you come with us, we'll give you 50% of the overseas sales." And you think of the whole world, it's quite a lot, assuming it's round. It could be flat, who knows. Anyway, we thought it was round at the time. That's what we'd put in our programme with the crashing of the aircraft. If we'd have known, it was flat, it would be a different thing. So we said, "Great, we'll go with you." Anyway, so they were all happy. We got the contract. Now, their television, with very expensive lawyers and all that sort of stuff. And we're just 2 blokes who've got an idea with no lawyers and no more money, because we've put everything into this, into the pilot. So out comes this sort of 20, 30-page thing about rights and who can do what and all this sort of stuff. And you're reading it going, this is almost like legalese. And what's that, legal fiction on there? I don't know what that is, but that looks like my name. I think it is. Anyway, we read all this nonsense, didn't understand a word of it, but there was one thing that we did notice was missing. It said nothing about this 50% overseas sales money that would likely to come in. So we queried this, and they just obfuscated. There's a word, difficult word, isn't it? Obfuscated. They didn't sort of answer that. They answered all the other queries and what have you that we had. So when it came to very close to the first day of principal photography, we still hadn't signed this contract because we were a bit nervous about it. And we were showing it to, you know, friends and mums and dads and neighbours and even the gravedigger. He had a look. I don't know what that means, mate. So when we turned up, it was the day before. We still hadn't signed the contract, and they were getting a bit nervous, and we were getting a bit nervous. And he said, "Are you actually going to sign this contract? Because we can't go and make the programme if you don't." And I said, "Yeah, but the thing is, you promised us 50% overseas sales." Now, we weren't being greedy for the money's sake, because we wanted to make more different ideas for programmes. And we thought, well, anything that comes back, it's cost us a fortune. We'd borrowed the money. We had to pay that back. And if we could make some money on the back of this, because the actual fee they were paying us was almost nothing. So if we could make some money from the overseas sales, that would mean that we could come up with loads of ideas for kids and stuff. Because I grew up with things like, I nearly said on the buses then, but I did grow up with on the buses. Do you remember on the buses? Yeah, it was good fun, wasn't it? That's when the buses actually ran, didn't they? And you didn't have to wait for 3. No, I was thinking the double-deckers. Do you remember the double-deckers? Get on board, get on board, get on board with the double. Yeah, they were all part of the truth movement back then. They just didn't know it. Anyway, we used to love all that kind of stuff, and I wanted to make children's television because I was quite passionate about children not having to watch the Chuckle Brothers. That was really, because the Chuckle Brothers, they would, I don't know whether you've ever seen the Chuckle Brothers, but they were sort of 110, and they would always fall out of vision like this. They were sort of doing a Laurel and Hardy, but they didn't actually do any stunts. The stunts were off camera all the time, so they would fall out of shot, and then you'd see them down here. Oh, I've just fallen over. So we wanted to do it much more adventurous and a bit more fun. And so what we did is because we were younger for one thing, and we were more desperate. But when we were in the office, and the guy said, "Are you going to sign this?" and we said, "Well, you haven't got the 50%. You know, it's not in there." And this is when I realised that television wasn't quite the dream that I'd had for the last 15 years as a young bloke, thinking television was a lovely place and that Pogle's Wood was, you know, a marvellous thing, or Bagpuss. Because he said, "Are you going to sign it?" And I said, "Well, what about the 50%? He said, "Do you want to be on telly or don't you?" And it was as simple as that. And my friend who was in the show with me said, "Richard, don't cause a stink." And I said, "Yeah, but it's the principle of the thing. They promised it." And I said, "But you promised us." He said, "No, we didn't." I said, "You did. We were both standing there, and you said." He said, "No, you don't. If you want to be on telly, sign the contract." So we had to sign the contract. And it was downhill after that. We suddenly found all our rights were disappearing, any control over the programme, and it was a bit of a nightmare. And although we tried to do more television, I realised then that television was a place for really nasty people. Not the crew, I have to say, the crew, the television crew, the people who actually do the work, they were brilliant. They knew their stuff, they were fantastic. But the devious bastards who sort of in the executive offices, you know, the chief executive and all of those, they were the snake oilmen, and they were horrible. They were narcissistic. They just was about the money. I thought TV was, you'd have the best talent that you could possibly get. I didn't realise you had to have a photograph of you with a child doing something rather nefarious. And, of course, we'd had that in our series. We didn't realise we'd written it already in with our 10-year-old. But at least you can be seen any of that, and it can't be misconstrued. Anyway, that was my sort of experience with mainstream telly. Not in mainstream telly anymore, and I never ever want to be. Thank you very much. And if ever, any of those big shows, I remember even GB News once asked me to come on the show and answer questions, and I said no. Do you know what? I just don't want to. I know how television spins things, and I don't. So I'm very cautious about. Now, on YouTube channels, I don't mind because people are generally quite nice. and I try to be quite nice myself. Anyway, so that was that. And as Greg, who's vanished, the wonderful invisible man, was saying at the beginning, that I used to do this sort of heritage shows. So when I moved out of television, I was going around the country as the bald explorer, exploring heritage, landscape, nature, old buildings, and I'd wander around and produce stuff, because I'm an entertainer at heart. That's where I've come from. I used to ride a unicycle, lie on a bed of nails, eat fire, juggle 5 balls on a big walking globe. I used to do robotics and mime. And now I know that if I do any mime in the show, I've been told by the chap who booked me today that he would deduct anything that he was going to pay me if I do any mime. But people always say, can you do that thing with your suitcase? So for 25 quid, deduct from the 25 quid of my fee, I'm going to do just very briefly, especially for those poor people who've come in off the streets here in this 15-minute city of Milton Keynes. Just on that note, we were here last night. I don't know if anybody else was here last night, and I don't want to sort of, if this is your favourite place, you're going to hate me. But we came up last night. I haven't been to Milton Keynes for so long. I forgot what a dreadful, what a place it is, with its very sharp, angular buildings and its glass and its steel and lack of any sort of curves or any sort of natural-looking thing. We went for a little stroll around these dystopian buildings, and there's round the back here. There's a sort of square, and you'll see these tower blocks where people are living in, and further afield, there are all the corporations that presumably the people go from there to their workplace, and I assume that they earn some money from the corporations, and they go back to these god-awful flat things and pay a rent back to the corporations, and then whatever small change they've got downstairs, there's all these big branded names of fast food places selling synthetic foods. I might be a bit critical here, because I come from near the Downs in Sussex, and we were watching them. But there's a little fountain. It's a nice little fountain, and around it, just to make it look, green and nice, is some AstroTurf. We couldn't believe it's Astro. I mean, and I said to Julia, my lovely partner Julia, I said, this is what a 15-minute city is going to look like. All people closed into these dystopian-style buildings, getting drunk, dressed up on a Saturday night in as much flesh that they can ooze out of their things. And we were watching a lot of these people, and they were oozing out of their dresses because they are eating all this inappropriate food that basically every year is just extending them. And I said, and that's it, that's their life. It's this hamster wheel. And I just felt really weird sitting there smoking my pipe. And they probably thought I was weird, and they're probably right. Anyway, so I can't remember how I got onto that, but I was going to do this little bit of mime. Oh yeah, for these lovely people who haven't seen it before. So just to be clear, I went to, when I left school, let's not go into all that. In my mid-20s, I wanted to be this film director, TV producer, and I couldn't get into any of the film schools and things. I didn't want to be a small cog in somebody else's machine. I didn't know then that I was actually quite an independent thinker. So I went to mime school, of all things, and that's where I started to perform all sorts of nonsense. But including one of the things, the thing that would baffle most people and impress them was the most simplest technique, which is called fixed point. And you use that, and I use it, and you may have seen this on the telly and other performers, but I use it in my suitcase, which, by the way, I bought from a second-hand shop. And this suitcase, although it's very nice, it does have a slight intermittent fault, as you can see there. Occasionally it gets stuck. Look at that. And it kind of reminds me very much what's going to happen with the cars that we drive in the future. Because, you know, if you said something on social media or something like that that is inappropriate, or that you have eaten too much beef, then you won't be able to go to the places that you want to go to, because you'll find that the vehicle will just stop and you won't be able to get out, because, you know, you'll be stuck in this 15-minute city. And so now a lot of people think this is on a string, but it's not on a string at all. It's actually... Oh, hang on. I got it. Don't panic. No, don't rush to help, will you? There we go. So we're all right. I think. Sorry. Talking of which, just to finish on the mine bit, the 15-minute cities will in future have these invisible barriers that will be desperately trying to get out of. And of course you'll be running and you won't get anywhere. So that's the future, apparently. But we don't need to worry about that, because we're going to kill it all off and have a much better future. Thank you very much. Anyway, I thought I'd just show you a little bit of mime. So I was doing my YouTube channel, and it was going quite well, and we got up to about, amazingly, over 6 years, got about 25,000 subscribers. I now have 206, the lovely Julia keeping count, 1,000 subscribers, which is, you know, to me is a bit mind-blowing, because in 2022, I was sitting thinking about the channel and thinking, oh, it's kind of plateaued, not many people watching me go into churches and looking up at the bells and looking at the edifices and the flowers outside the front, or any of that sort of nonsense. And I'd watched GB News, because there was that Scottish bloke with the long hair that used to do the coast thing. And I quite liked him. And he was saying some random thing about, I don't know if you remember this, there was a bit of a fuel problem, maybe still be. And he was saying, what would happen if we didn't all pay our bills, if we didn't pay our fuel bills? And I thought to myself, that's a good idea. If everybody did it, because like you, I felt the squeeze, I felt everything was sort of coming in on me, couldn't really work out quite why. But I did feel that, so I thought, oh, I'll just make a video. I'll sit in this chair. I sat in my chair, like that. And I said, is he right? Talking about Neil Oliver, just in case you didn't get it. And I put the video out. Now, normally I would get about 2,000 to 3,000 views on my videos over the 6 years. You know, you put a good one in going into a church and showing all the marvellous building work and the misericords and various, you know, all of that, the good stuff. Lots of editing, nice mood music, get about 3,000 views. This was just me sitting in a chair going, is he right? Should we, what good idea? What if we all didn't pay our bills? That would be a marvellous thing. And I, in the space of 2 or 3 days, got 100,000 views. I was going, bloody hell. So I did another video and I said, oh, thanks ever so much for all those views. You're obviously quite interested in some of this stuff. And I didn't really know what this stuff was at the time. And then I can't remember what else I said. I must have said something which triggered a bunch of people, because they all were going, yeah, Richard. And I tell you what, have a look at this and have a look at this. So that's when I really sort of changed direction and was going, blimey, there's something in this. And at first I had no idea, I had no intention of getting into the truth and freedom and sovereignty movement. I had no notion of going down this path at all, except that there was something, a little bell in my head telling me this was the right thing to do, and it was the right time. And I couldn't account for that at all. You see, if you go back to, you'll probably remember this because you've got long memories. I think it was March 2020. I know that's a long time ago, and what with all the chemtrails and the geoengineering and the crap that they're sort of luring from there to sort of turn us into demented idiots, which they're doing quite well, to be honest, with all the poisoning that's going on. It's hard to remember things these days, and I think that may be part of the plan. But anyway, in 2020, you may remember there was this funny bloke who was on Have I Got News for You? Was it that? It was one of those programmes. He shuffled, and he'd become Prime Minister. Dishevelled bloke, used to like drawing buses or something, I don't know. He was a mayor of London for a while, you may have remembered him, and used to ride around on a bicycle, already seeding the idea that we would all be on bicycles and that cars would, of course, be eradicated or just catch fire, because that's what they're now doing, these electric cars, aren't they? Plug them in, catch fire. Oh, nice and warm. Didn't realise we were having a bonfire tonight, only I've just lost my leg and the rest of me is melting quite quickly, because you can't put them out, apparently. So he came to be the Prime Minister and he locked us all down, and at the time, I was doing a sort of an entertainment live show with the lovely Julia. It was just called the Vobes show. It was very sort of banal type thing. We were just entertaining people once a week at the time with things like, it was an interactive show, so we would say to the audience, show us your knockers. And people would send in their door knockers. So, you know, because it was a nice little community of people, we'd say, well, whose knockers are these? And you'd look at a posh door and you'd go, oh, yeah, that's Daphne's house, must be. So we were doing that kind of stuff. And in the lockdown, we said, well, we can't go out anywhere, although actually I was, but that's another story. We were doing the live show, and people, and I would say, started to talk about the nonsense of this. I said, it's funny, isn't it? Why are we all being locked down? It seems to be, 3 weeks to flatten the curve, all this sort of crap. And I started to talk about it, but my God, the reaction from the audience. The audience was going, no, Richard, don't talk about this. No, we don't want to know. No, you mustn't say anything. You've got to stay in. And I said, well, it's a lovely day, It's lovely. Isn't it? Remember in those days, I didn't know anything about chemtrails and geoengineering or climate change. I knew global warming crap was a myth. I knew all of that man-made rubbish was complete. By the way, it is rubbish. I'll just let you know in case you didn't know. It's only an opinion. You can disagree, of course. You can tell me that, if Greta is here, I don't know if she's here today, she's wrong. Sorry, I was going to do a bit of French skipping then, just to liven it up. And so the audience were really anti-me questioning things. But in the lockdown, you see, my youngest son, Billy, worked at the local hospital in A&E. And he said, and he was living at home at the time, and on occasions he would come back and he would say, Dad, and he would be like, 4 miles away, come in the door, it's a big house, and he would say, Dad, we've got to isolate him and his girlfriend in the top bedroom, which actually is in my studio now. And so he would say, well, we're isolating. I said, oh, what does that mean? So we can't come out the room, we can only use the bathroom, we have to stay in and all of this during the lockdown. And he said, you better do the same downstairs. I said, don't be stupid. I said, it's a lovely day, I'm going out. I've got to go and make a video of landscape heritage and nature. He said, well, we think we've got it. We've done the test, and we've all come back positive and all this. I said, well, you look all right. He says, but the hospital. I said, well, you do what you've got to do. I'm out. But when he was working in A&E, this was really bizarre. I found this very difficult to understand. So you know what it's like if you break a leg. Ow, hurts, doesn't it? And you need to have somebody to do something, or if you have a car accident or something, you go to A&E, and so people were coming and go, oh yeah, broken leg, yeah, you've got bone sticking out from you where it shouldn't. Go and have a sit down there, wait 8 hours, and eventually someone will see you if you haven't bled to death. That's more like A&E now, isn't it? Absolutely, they don't mind if you bleed to death now. It saves them a lot of hassle with all that midazolam. So what would happen is that if somebody came in and they said, I think I've got, and they said that word, COVID, during the lockdown? It was as if the alarms went off. There would be this sort of... The lights would come down, be shined straight on them. Oh, he said, what did you say? I think I've got COVID. So what would happen, and this is true, he told me, he said we'd all be masked up, we would throw them a mask, we would march them into the car park. You know, people have just got sniffles. They're worried out their heads because they've heard all the propaganda, all the lies, all the shit from the government and everybody else. And they were marched out into the car park and they said, OK, are you able to breathe? Yes. And you've got sniffles? Right. OK, go home. Go home. Now, if you one day you're in the bath and you're feeling, your boobie, and you go, oh, I've got a lump there. What you normally would do is you'd go to the doctor, wouldn't you? And the doctor would say, oh, let's have a feel. Nice. No, you have got a lump there. You better go and have it scanned. So you go and have it scanned, and then they go, oh, yeah, I think what we'll have to do is we'll get the big scalpels out and we'll chop it off. Early intervention always seemed to be the sensible thing. Because they hadn't got to know all these wonderful techniques that we now know, the occulted stuff from like 100 years ago, but that we're rediscovering to help you get rid of things like cancer, which can be cured. Oh, not allowed to say that on YouTube. It's the liberty of not being on YouTube. So that would normally be the thing. You'd have early intervention, which was fantastic. But with COVID, during this time, it was no, go home and only come back if you're blue in the face and can't breathe. And then we'll put you on a ventilator and send you on your way, which is really good. And I think Mr. Dyson got involved in some of that, didn't he? He makes hoovers. I think the reason they were all dying is they were just extracting the air out of them rather than actually putting it in. You should have turned it the other way around. But anyway, so I found that really difficult to cope with. So I was mentioning this in the show and the audience kept shutting me up. And then it was worse when the vaccine came in. And they were saying, oh, yeah, at the speed of science, we've come up with this wonderful venom. This graphene. No, this nanotechnology, I forget what it's called now. This health remedy. Oh, yes, that's what it was. A health remedy that we'll inject it into you, about 8 or 10 different times until you're actually dead. And you've had, those horrible worms come out of your veins that John O'Looney will talk about quite horrifically on many TikTok videos. We'll inject that and you'll be safe, And people like the good old lovely, cuddly Tony Blair, love him, don't we? The Luciferian himself. When he was saying, you're stupid if you don't take it. Yes, I think you're stupid if you don't take it, Tony. After you, mate. After you, 8 little boosters in there and see you off. But you're too busy taking the adrenochrome, whatever it's called, like old Klaus. It's nice to see Klaus is gone, isn't it? Yeah, he's dead, isn't he? He's dead. He's gone somewhere, hopefully, painfully, nastily. But he did make a nice Bond villain, though, didn't he? Mr. Dr. Evil. He really did do that. So when I was doing my stuff, I realised I couldn't talk about it. So what a liberty it was, what freedom, I should say, because liberty is a bit of a difficult word. What freedom it was to be able to start talking to an audience about the things that clearly had been pent up in me, in my soul. And I started this journey. And as a result of starting to talk, it was amazing how many members of the audience knew so much. I mean, you lot here, looking at you, I can see lovely looking people. But you're incredibly well informed. And I'm still on that journey. I still feel I'm the baby of the party. And I'm talking to people, I don't know, like Dawn Lister who wrote the book, Everything You Know About Illness is Wrong, or words to that effect, telling us that viruses had never been isolated and they're a complete load of old bollocks. And you go, oh, that makes sense. Beautiful book, by the way. If you've never read it, I have read it. And it's like a prosecutor in a court, the way she writes. It's really beautifully written because they just take the case of the pharmaceuticals and the medical industry apart bit by bit until the logic is just so obvious and you go, oh yeah, Of course it doesn't exist. Of course it's a load of old rubbish. And yet we've been suckered in. And I found that with all my guests, they've been absolutely fantastic, apart from Gary Fawn, of course, because he lumbered me with, he's written some books, I don't know if you know that, he's written some very curious books. They are actually quite good, and I'd recommend you purchasing them. But he did do this dodgy thing by saying to me, he said, I'm going to do a book giveaway on the show. And I said, oh, great. And he gave me about 5 or 6 books, and it was like the first people who contact me could get a book. And months after that show, I still get people going, yes, can I have one of those books? Can I have one? I want one. It's like, it's gone. It's gone. They've all gone. I'm not buying you his books to send to you. Thank you very much. Although I think they would like me to do that. But no, he's a lovely bloke. I don't know where he is. I heard him chuckling just now. He's over there, lovely. One of the things that I've had to do on the show, and I know people, if you've seen it, you'll know that I'm sort of a nodding dog, really, on the show, because you get whoever it is I'm interviewing, and I'm doing this a lot. Yeah. Oh, yeah, yeah. And I'm thinking, how many minutes have I got to go like this? When's it ending? No, of course I'm not. I'm listening intently to what they're saying. I was advised, somebody took me aside, and he said, look, if you're going down this path and you're going to start interviewing people about all of this stuff, you're going to get some very strange ideas that you may not have heard before. Have an open mind. And in the past, it's true, I would be quite cynical and I would be quite forensic in my questioning and go, I just don't think that's true. How can you say that you're channeling aliens? How can you say that money is created out of nothing? How can you say that viruses have not been isolated? How can you tell me that a booster is not a good idea? That just sounds impossible. Why would the government try to kill us and depopulate the planet and 1 minute have 70 million people and the next 15 million? Why would that be even a thing? So he said, have an open mind. And that was the very best piece of advice that I've ever had. Because I would have people, and it was challenging, they would say things, but I said to myself, just go with it. You don't have to accept it, but listen. And I think that has been, I dare say that's the same attitude that all of you've got, because we wouldn't be where we are if we didn't want to hear an alternative view as we ride the wave. You have to get that in every now and again, just to be on the theme. I was going to sell some surfboards, actually, because everyone else is selling merchandise. I don't have anything to sell. So I said to Julia, quick, get some plywood, chop it up, and just write Vobes on it, and we'll sell it as surfboards, so we're with the theme. But, yeah, it is having an open mind suddenly changes your perspective because you're open to all sorts of stuff. And one of the first people I had on the channel was Andrew Bridgen. What a lovely bloke. A really lovely, and brave. What a lovely, start again. What a lovely bloke. What a lovely and brave bloke. What a lovely, brave and noble bloke. And what was really good from my point of view was I'd watched him on the 15th of December 2022, in that first time that he got up and was questioning about the 500,000 yellow card problems with the vaccine. And at the time, there was the beginnings of the sudden death thing. And everybody left nobody turned up, did they? It was an empty chamber. And it was not even, what got me is not even the opposition. It was a great time for the opposition to sort of laugh at him or to take the mickey by being all in force and just this one Conservative MP as he was at that time. But nobody was there, nobody at all. And it was like, this is really strange, isn't it? And yet this was very much, to me and to many, many people, one of the single most important questions we're asking, because you're injecting this lethal killing stuff into people, and if people are having adverse effects, then surely the government would be there, seeing as they're the ones that's been pushing this bloody rubbish, would be there to defend it. But nobody was there to listen or defend it, and I thought that's really odd. He's been ostracised. So I reached out to him. Now, at that point, and I still am really, I was a nobody YouTuber. I mean, nobody had heard of me. I had no, didn't have 200,000 followers or anything like that. And I reached out to him, and I did it about 3 times, because you have to do it in threes, don't you? It's always in threes. It's like with the 3 buses that come at once. It's all part of the plan. There's some Luciferian at the Clapham bus station going, right, 3, 1, okay. After the 3rd bus, they can all get on. I'm sure it's all part of the plan. Anyway, I got in touch with him, and he rang me up one day out of the blue. I was over at Julia's mother's with Julia having a family thing, and he rang up in December, and he said that he would be prepared to come on the show and be interviewed. Now, I'd never interviewed a politician. I wasn't really interested in politics before all of that. But I was interested in Andrew, because there was a man who seemed to be the only one standing up for the rest of us. So we had a nice old chat, and I realised very quickly that none of the mainstream media were interested, of course, in the story, and it started to become apparent, of course, that they were in on it. Well, I kind of knew that they were, because they were pushing heavily all of this nonsense. So I got Andrew on. We did the interview, and he even talked about the post office scandal from 20 years earlier, or however long it was, which was really interesting. So he was a man who knew what it was like to stand up, put his head above the parapet and say, hold on a sec, I think there's something bad going on here. And I thought, this is a really honourable bloke. And so it was fantastic to have him on. I then stupidly approached, what's his name? Who's the guy of the other politician who's trying to get into power? Richard Tice, that's his name. I stupidly had Richard Tice on, because Richard Tice was on Talk Radio. I used to listen to Talk Radio thinking that it was another open, truthy type thing. I soon realised that was a load of old cods as well. In fact, even GB News, I can't watch that. I love Neil Oliver's work, but the rest of it I just don't have any time for. In fact, I don't have a television anyway. I haven't had a television for about 10 years now, so it's all a load of old nonsense. But I did have Richard Tice on, and it was really weird interviewing Richard Tice, who I had an informal chat, and he's going, oh, yes, WEF, hate them, WHO, oh, yeah, we're going to do this. And he was all quite relaxed. Then I said, right, OK, we'll start recording now. And suddenly he became the robot that he is. And he just stuck to the line. He said all the things that he does say and the politician-y stuff. And I thought, oh, my God. That's what, at that time, in I think it must have been about January 2023, at that time, there was this huge movement of people saying, oh, we're going to go for reform. Is it reform or the other one? Yeah, thanks. I mean, I've lost interest now in all of this sort of stuff. But there seemed to be, everywhere you go on the internet, everything was like, yeah, go for reform, go for... And I thought, hang on a minute, I've interviewed this bloke, and very nice chap, very affable and all of that. But when he was being Mr. Politician, he changed, and I was trying to ask him some questions about the WEF and all of this, and he was like not budging on that. It wasn't being open as he had been before, and I thought, oh yeah, it looks like there's a bit of control going on there. You can't step out of the very narrow lines that you've got. And that really taught me something. Then I started, of course, to get loads of different interesting people, like the health people who were telling me all sorts of different things. I'd lost faith, as most people have now, in the NHS, in Big Pharma, but the amount of knowledge to know how wonderful and incredible that we are and how the body just wants to heal. And sometimes you only need to hear these things once and they just go, of course. Why did I think that you had to always have a white pill that would just, you've got a problem, take a pill and that will get rid of it. It's only getting rid of the effect. It's not dealing with the cause. So you hear these things just that once, somebody saying, well, actually, if you do this. And some things are quite challenging. I had a lady on talking about bioresonance and said, if I take a strand of your hair, she was in Ireland. She said, you could send me a strand of your hair. I said, that might be difficult, actually. There are other areas where you can get a strand of hair from. It grows quite profusely under the arm. Anyway, she said, if you take a strand of my hair, I can get the vibrations and the resonance from you and diagnose you. And, you know, these are quite challenging things if you're coming out of that narrow band that we've all been trained to do. But the more she explained it, and the more she explained how that works, I thought, yeah. Now, I'd had the advantage of seeing Harry Rhodes in the Shine Seminars, which is an event in Gloucestershire in August, whenever it was, 2022, I think it was. No, whenever it was. I'd seen him giving a demonstration of blood and showing how when you have your blood tested, and you probably know all this, but I've got to fill time. So, you know, you take a little bit of blood, you put it under the microscope, and he showed it on a screen like this, and you see all the blood cells clumping together because we're all under the EMF, we're all eating the wrong foods, we've got all the crap raining down on us, and it's affecting our blood. And sort of some people are being affected a lot more, depending on. So then he got some structured water, and I'm sure somebody will talk about this later on, maybe, I don't know. And she went to take a guzzle of this, and the idea was he would take another pinprick of blood and show what happened after you've taken the structured water. But as she was drinking the water, this original sample was still on the screen. And as she drank the water, that you could see the blood cells were being repaired. They were moving away. They were no longer clumped together. And Harry explained that it's talking to each other. And of course, he did another sample, and of course, it was much better. And I started to realize, you know, you're sitting there with all these revelations coming to you, going, bloody hell. That things at a distance do talk to each other. Now, again, you probably know all this, but as a nobody YouTuber on this journey of learning, like so many people are, there's so much to take in, and you really have to have this open mind and just listen to it. You don't have to accept it, of course. So when the lady was saying, I take a strand of your hair and I can diagnose what you need to do, but not only can I diagnose it, from a distance, I can make you better because I'll just put this in my machine and program it in a certain way, and a certain frequency will blast this hair to kingdom come. It will affect me too. I thought, this is incredible. And yet, you know, all of this sort of knowledge has been known for 100 years and had been occulted. And we're all beginning now to get to understand why, because of the whole money-spinning mechanism and the whole Luciferian Satanist thing of keeping us down and keeping us on the rat race and keeping us low vibration, so we don't know how marvelous and incredible that we really are. And if we only knew that, and if we could get the people in the 15-minute cities who are drinking all the crap and eating the food and spilling out of their dresses and all of that to realize actually just how marvelous they really are. And they don't need to be doing this. That there's a beautiful world out here where nature is just so wonderful. And it's really interesting, having had the career that I've had with the television, which has now made it much easier for me to talk to camera and explain certain things in my monologues, or at least sort of work them out, and then listen to the various amazing and wonderful guests that I've had, and the theatre stuff that I've done, the performance stuff that I've done, where I can stand up here quite easily, and hopefully you're enjoying the nonsense that I'm talking about. It's funny how everything that we've done in our lives now seems to have been part of the pathway. Do you find that? That you suddenly realizing that those problems that you had, or those jobs that you did, have been part of what was necessary. I mean, I lost an eye in 2010. I was a performer back then, and I had this bug called acanthamoeba, and it's latent in water, which is fairly harmless, unless you put a contact lens in water overnight, over 4 days, and then put it back into your eye. And the bug digs into your cornea and it irritates. And if you try to sort of put drops into it, it goes into a cyst and it sort of stays there for a few months, and then it comes out of the cyst and starts eating the cornea, which is extremely painful. And not only is it painful, is you can't open your eye, you can't tolerate any light. And what I didn't realise is my right eye, which was unaffected, was totally sympathetic with that, so that I couldn't keep this eye open. And over a protracted 4 years, going up to Moorfields Eye Hospital every week, and having different drops of chlorhexidine and goodness knows what, and 3 cornea transplants. And in the end, I begged them to remove the eye because it was so painful and so bad. And I had a prosthesis, which is what I wear now. But there were times, and I was looking after the kids, and I was still working, and I would go off with this silver alien-like, not lizard eye, just make that clear. It was a silver eye. It wasn't any, shaping going on. And I had a patch on my glasses, which was quite handy. And I was doing filming then, because I'd had to give up all the juggling and unicycling and fire eating, because you couldn't see out of this area. But it was really painful, couldn't bear the light. And there were days when I was just on the ground in severe pain. I mean, it's amazing how, you know what it's like if you get something in the eye. You know what that's like, oh, God, that's just a minute, I got it. Well, imagine that all day for 4 years. It's not nice. But there was a point when I was so low, I was suicidal. I know it's, a jolly chappy these days, but I was really suicidal. And if it hadn't been for the fact that I have 3 marvellous children who think I'm a bit of a loony for thinking these things, I was quite tempted to go and stand in front of a train and see if I could stop it when it's going, 125 miles an hour, just to see, after a couple of glasses of whiskey or something. I was genuinely that low. And there was a point where I did call out. I don't know if you've ever done this, been at a point in your life where you're so low and you call out. Now, I'm not a religious person. I've always felt there's something spiritual, but never really understood it. And I was on the ground and I was that low, and I said, look, if there is some force, if there is something out there, I am, this is the time I need your help. And do you know what happened? Nothing. Not a bloody thing. So, and that was a bit of a revelation as well, because nothing actually happened, and I was that low. And other people have said, oh, but when I've been in that situation, something really precious and something, amazing happens. Somebody comes in. The only thing that happened was a friend of mine, a very good friend of mine, said, Richard, just remember, this will pass. And it did pass. And that whole experience has never left me, but it taught me that, it's amazing what the human body will tolerate, what you can put up with, and that once you've come down to the lowest point, the only way is up. And I now know what the lowest point for me is, because I didn't put myself in front of a train. And every day is a bonus, every day. So in a way, it wasn't an immediate help, but I needed to go through some terrible thing in order for me to suddenly appreciate life. And I appreciate life very, very much. And I think that's what we're all in one way or another, somewhere. It's part of our journey to understand what we're about to maybe go through in the near future. And it makes us stronger. All of that stuff does make us stronger. And I mean, I don't really know why I mentioned any of that, really. But it's part of building us up to who we are and what we're about. So one of the things which I hadn't mentioned, which I wanted to mention because it always gets a little shock, is I don't know how long we've got. 8 minutes. Fantastic. That's about the length of my Snug and Cozy thing. I could do an episode of that, but I won't. One of the things back in 2019, the things that started to wake me up also to the nonsense of the government and what was going on, which got me on my chair saying, why is the government, you know, the nice, kind, benevolent government that is there to look after us, trying to kill us one way or another? Why is that? One of the things that really set me off questioning at the time was, you'll remember this, in about November 2019, if we were watching the news, and I wasn't really watching the news, but you'd get things on the internet, and people would share these things to you. Was these videos in China? Do you remember these videos? And you'd see all these Chinese people walking along quite merrily, walk, 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 and then they go. Do you remember that? Loads of them. They'd just be strolling. Funny thing is, we're seeing more of that now with the prevention thing as a result. I won't do it any more times. All right, once. And that really got me worried, because having been in filming and stuff for a long time, I thought that was very unnatural. And also you could see I recognise a stage fall anywhere. And these people were sort of falling down, and I don't know whether it was them turning on the 5G experiment, as people are telling me now, that's what it was, testing out the 5G so that we all go like that at some point, and they'd already had some experimental vaccine shoved into them, maybe. But it all looked very suspicious, and yet the public were buying it. Now, to me, it was bleeding obvious that it was something was wrong. And during the whole lockdown, during all of that, I mean, I was a bit cheeky. I was going out onto the street going, "Bring out your dead, dig-a-ding, ga-da-ding, bring out your dead." And there was no dead. Now, of course, it might be a bit tricky, because there probably is a lot of people, and it would be a bit, you know. But at least I didn't go out there clapping the NHS, you know. Well done, everybody. Well done, all you key workers. And if I'd lost a front door key and wanted one, at least I knew there was somebody there working away doing those keys, which is marvellous. So what is the future? Just to wrap up my little talk, what is the future? Well, the future is several more guests today, coffee, and a very lovely informed day. I'm going to learn a lot. It's going to be amazing. We're getting out of this, by the way. I think this is all over. We're just seeing the shenanigans. There's going to be some rough stuff. There may be some pretend war or something. I've not followed any of the wars. I didn't want to materialise any of that nonsense in my life. The thing that does slightly worry me at the moment is all the crap that's coming down from the sky, the decimation of the farming and all of that, especially as a lot of us want to get our own land and get back to our land. And to me, this place, Milton Keynes, is the antithesis, if that's the right word, of what's wrong with society. It's manufactured, it's angular, it's soulless, it's just a horrible place. And I think the future, all of this will disappear, and we will get back to those most important things which we're beginning to understand is deep inside us. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you.
Fun, right? Well, we got some really good speakers today, as I said, so we'll have a break, 15 minutes, not as in the city, but 15:15, and